Hi, hello, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Maddie. I love reading books. That's all you need to know. And it's been about 2 months since I made my last video, and I feel like I do struggle with YouTube and just longer form content in general because I film and edit everything on my phone, so it's just a lot of storage space and editing to do all on a singular device. And I feel like I'm just still new at this, so sometimes I just don't know what to film or talk about. So my goal is to be just more casual with my content, and I want to do a bunch of just random book stuff today and this weekend. One of those things being tackling my bookshelf. If you can see, it is not very organized right now. I feel like every time I film content for stuff, my bookshelf just becomes a complete mess. So it's a mess right now. Also, because it's September, I'm starting to get into my fall TBR, and I want to talk about some of the books that I'm reading right now. Also, I've done a little bit of book shopping since my last video, so I want to show off some of the new books that I've gotten. So yeah, if you like books or any of the things I just talked about, hopefully stick around and enjoy. Starting off with what I'm currently reading / what I just finished reading. So I recently just finished reading The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which is like a fantasy romance with vampires. Hence why I'm reading it now. I feel like it is a good fall-time book because vampires. I know this book and just this series overall has been somewhat popular for a couple of years now. I finally just got into it. I definitely understand all the hype around the book. But if you didn't know, this book follows the main character. I think her name is pronounced Oraya. Hopefully that's right. But essentially she's a human who lives in the vampire world. Because of that, she definitely feels like she doesn't really belong with vampires because she is a human. And she also feels like she doesn't really belong with humans because she's been raised by a vampire named Vincent for most of her life. Anyways, because of that, she essentially enters this competition and competes in these trials. And the end goal is if you win the competition and all the trials, you get a wish from the goddess. Her wish is to be forever connected to Vincent, her father, so she can gain his powers and therefore his vampire abilities and just finally fit into the world that she has been raised in. And of course, along the way, because it is a fantasy romance, there's this handsome man who's also competing in these trials, and yeah, things just progress from there. But I really enjoyed this book. I loved Oraya. I loved Oraya. I loved her character. She is definitely a strong female character, but I feel like the author doesn't overdo it because yes, she's strong, but she also has a sensitive, vulnerable side to her as well that peeks out throughout moments of the book. Also, I just love the relationship she had with Vincent, the like father-daughter dynamic. It was just so complex and I feel like so well written, and it made me feel so many different emotions. And I feel like Oraya and the MMC reign definitely had a bit of an enemies to lovers moment throughout the book, which was really nice to read because I feel like fantasy romance books recently that have been marketed as enemies to lovers are not really enemies to lovers. It's more like the characters have a vague dislike of each other but then are instantly attracted to each other, which I feel like is just not enemies to lovers. Also, I felt like the trials and like the competition aspect was really interesting to read about. I feel like they actually had stakes to them and consequences, so I really enjoyed reading about that as well. Once again, I feel like a lot of fantasy novels now that have trial aspects in them, like the trials just lack stakes. And so I don't really get invested in them, but I did not have that problem with this book. I will say, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I kind of wish there was more like info dumping in the book. The author, she's a really good writer, but she just throws you in the middle of the story and the world and the politics and all the history of it. So you're reading it and you're like kind of confused at first because you're thrown in and you're like, wait, what does all this mean again? And you don't really get like a clear, concrete explanation of everything, but as you read on, you start to like remember more about the world and the history and the politics, but I felt like still at the end I didn't clearly understand all of it. I wish there was like a sentence to just like summarize everything that was happening. Also, one thing that surprised me personally was just like the language that was used. I don't really like when fantasy novels uses like too modern of dialogue. Not that I need people to like speak in old-timey language, but sometimes it just goes a little bit too far on like the modern side of the scale. But I feel like that's just like a pet peeve / personal preference of mine. But yeah, I read it, I finished it, I really enjoyed it. I rated it 4.25 stars, and with my rating system, that means I really liked it. Because the ending of the first book was absolutely wild, I had to immediately go into the second book, and I read like 230 pages of it in one sitting. Brings me on to my current read, The Ashes in the Star-Cursed King, which is the second book in the series. I feel like I can't really talk about it in depth without spoiling literally everything that happened in the first book, but I can say the second book definitely ramped up in the pace of the story and the plot line, and I have a really hard time putting the book down because I want to know what happens next, so I just keep on reading and avoiding all my responsibilities in life so that I can read it. To my most recent book purchases. I did do some damage, but not a lot. Two of the books I purchased, I think a couple weeks ago, I actually have both read them on my Kindle through Kindle Unlimited, but I needed the physical copies in my life because I love the book so much. They are Colty and Dear Aaron by Mariana Zapata. Both of these are contemporary romance. This is more of a sports romance because it deals with soccer. This is like a Dear John, Pen Pals type of book. I read both of these on Kindle Unlimited. I believe all of her books are on Kindle Unlimited. That's where I read them, but I knew I had to pick up the covers of these editions because I'm afraid that one day these covers are going to go out of print and they're going to get republished with new covers like they did with the Wall of Winnipeg and Me and All Roads Lead Here, which I don't know about you, I'm not the biggest fan of those covers. I don't know, I feel like they just don't match the vibe of the book. So yeah, I needed the original editions of them in case they do get republished one day. The next books that I bought is actually a series, and it's the Remnants Chronicle series, the first book being The Kiss of Deception, and these books are by Mary E. Pearson. I have also seen that these series have a new cover edition going around, and the new cover editions better match the Dance of Thieves duology covers. With this series, I just wanted the original covers because they just feel so 2014 to me, and I love it. I don't know if these covers are going out of print, but in case that they do, I wanted to get my hands on them before they do. This is a YA fantasy book. It deals with a princess, and she is set to wed the prince of the neighboring kingdom. However, she doesn't want to do that, so she ends up running away before the wedding. And while she's running away, she runs into two stranger men, and they are actually the prince and the assassin that was sent to kill her. So this book, like the title mentions, it feels like it's going to deal with deception, betrayal, mystery, which are all things that I love. I'm excited to read this book and the series, and I'm really excited to read the Dance of Thieves, Vow of Thieves duology once I finish this series. But as you could probably tell by my explanation of all of them, I'm afraid that the original covers are going to go out of print one day, and I needed to get my hands on them in case that they do. So is it financially irresponsible of me? I don't really know. mini in-depth tour. So I have my Stephanie Garber books, both the Once Upon a Broken Heart series and the Carvel series, all displayed right here because I need to. And then I have the rest of my fantasy books in series. I have them double stacked because I quite frankly have too many books, especially fantasy books. On the second middle shelf, I have all my romance books, so Emily Henry, Mariana Zapata. I also have the Magnolia Parks Universe series here by Jessa Hastings. Love that series. And then I have even more fantasy books up here because I didn't have enough room on the bottom shelf. On the top shelf, I have the Twilight series hidden all the way back there, and then a lot of my YA books as well. So YA mystery thrillers, a few YA romances, a few standalones, and a few incomplete series that I have up here as well because I just didn't have room in the other shelves of the bookshelves. I also have my tarot cards up here. They're cat tarot cards, and then behind them I have more books. So I have my lit fic books and then also some of my thriller books as well. But yeah, this is just what my bookshelf looks like right now. I obviously probably need more bookshelves to display my books properly, but I just work with what I have right now and it works. And then next to my bookshelf, I have my dresser, and I just have a few books right here from my immediate TBR.